The death of William Harrington sent shockwaves throughout the business world. For more than 5 decades, he had been known as one of America's most powerful billionaires, a man who transformed a small company into a global empire worth billions of dollars. News of his passing dominated television networks, financial newspapers, and online media platforms. Investors worried about the future of the Harrington empire, while competitors quietly wondered whether this would be the moment the family's influence would finally begin to weaken. Across the country, people spoke about his extraordinary journey from an ambitious entrepreneur to a business legend, whose name had become synonymous with wealth, power, and success. On the day of the funeral, black luxury vehicles arrived one after another at Harrington Manor. Politicians, celebrities, CEOs, and influential investors gathered to pay their respects. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, yet beneath the sadness there was also tension. Every member of the Harrington family understood that William's death marked the beginning of a new chapter. For years, questions had circulated about who would eventually take control of the empire. Now that moment had finally arrived. Inside the mansion, family members greeted one another politely, but behind their smiles lay uncertainty and ambition. Richard Harrington, William's eldest-known son, carried himself with confidence. Many believed he was the obvious successor. Having spent years working within the family business, he assumed leadership would naturally pass to him. His sister Victoria also attended, carefully observing everyone around her. She understood that wealth often changed relationships, and that major inheritances had a way of bringing hidden rivalries into the open. Other relatives, shareholders, and trusted executives quietly discussed what might happen after the reading of William's will. As the funeral service ended, guests slowly left the estate, but the closest family members were instructed to remain. This unusual request immediately sparked curiosity. William had always been a man who planned every detail of his life with precision. If he had arranged a private gathering after his funeral, everyone knew it must be important. The family was escorted into the Grand Library, a room filled with rare books, priceless artwork, and decades of Harrington history. The atmosphere felt different now. The formal mourning had ended, and anticipation had taken its place. Everyone expected the meeting to focus on money, ownership shares, luxury properties, and leadership positions within the company. After all, William's fortune was vast, and decisions regarding its future would impact thousands of employees and billions of dollars in assets. Some family members sat quietly, while others exchanged nervous glances. The possibility of gaining more power excited some, while the fear of losing influence worried others. No one wanted to admit it openly, but nearly everyone in the room was thinking about inheritance. Then William's longtime lawyer, James Carter, entered carrying an old leather briefcase. Unlike previous family meetings, his expression was unusually serious. He carefully placed the briefcase on the table and looked around the room before speaking. The confidence many family members had shown moments earlier began to fade. Something about his behavior suggested that this meeting would not unfold as expected. A sense of mystery settled over the library. What everyone believed would be a straightforward reading of a billionaire's final wishes was about to become something far more significant. The family had gathered expecting answers about the future of the Harrington empire, but none of them realized that William Harrington had left behind more than an inheritance. Hidden among his final instructions was information capable of changing everything they believed about their family, their fortune, and the legacy he had spent his entire life building. As every member of the Harrington family settled into their seats inside the Grand Library, an unusual silence filled the room. The walls were decorated with priceless paintings, antique clocks, and generations of family portraits, each representing decades of wealth and influence. Normally, this room was used for important business meetings where billion-dollar decisions were made, but today the atmosphere felt completely different. Everyone believed they were about to hear William Harrington's final wishes regarding the division of his empire. Instead, his longtime lawyer, James Carter, carefully removed an old, weathered envelope from his leather briefcase. Unlike the neatly prepared legal documents lying beside him, this envelope looked fragile, its edges faded with age, as though it had been hidden away for decades. Across the front, written in William's own handwriting, were the words, "To be opened only when Ethan Harrington returns home." The moment those words were spoken, confusion spread across the room. Every family member slowly turned toward Ethan. He looked just as surprised as everyone else. Having stayed away from the family for nearly 10 years, he never imagined that his grandfather had left behind something addressed specifically to him. Richard immediately questioned the lawyer, demanding to know why a personal letter should be included in the official reading of the will. Victoria folded her arms, silently studying Ethan's expression, while Daniel watched with growing frustration. None of them could understand why William would delay the reading of such an important document until Ethan returned. James took a deep breath before carefully unfolding the letter. The room became so quiet that even the ticking of the antique grandfather clock echoed through the library. In a calm voice, he began reading William's final message. The opening words immediately shocked everyone. William admitted that he had carried a burden for more than 30 years, a burden so heavy that he had never shared it with another member of the family. He explained that every important decision he had made throughout his life had been influenced by one secret that no one else knew. It was not a business mistake, a financial loss, or a failed investment. It was something deeply personal that affected the very foundation of the Harrington family itself. As the letter continued, William described how the truth had remained hidden because revealing it too early would have placed innocent lives in danger. He wrote that there had been moments when he wanted to tell his family everything, but each time he chose silence, believing it was the only way to protect the people he loved. Every sentence increased the tension inside the room. Family members exchanged uncertain glances, wondering what kind of secret could force one of the world's most powerful billionaires to remain silent for decades. Even James Carter, who had read the letter before, struggled to maintain his composure while reading the emotional words aloud. Then came the sentence that changed everything. William revealed that the Harrington family had been living with a false belief for more than 3 decades. He explained that the story everyone accepted as truth was incomplete, and that a hidden chapter of the family's history had never been told. Gasps filled the room as Richard immediately interrupted, accusing the lawyer of reading fabricated documents. His voice echoed through the library as he insisted his father would never create unnecessary confusion after his death. James calmly ignored the interruption and continued reading exactly as William had instructed. The letter went on to mention confidential hospital records, private photographs, legal documents, and DNA reports that had been locked away for years. William explained that every piece of evidence had been carefully preserved so the truth could one day be verified beyond any doubt. He wanted no arguments, no assumptions, and no false accusations. Everything had been documented with absolute precision because he knew that such a revelation would completely change the future of the Harrington Empire. The realization slowly settled over everyone in the room that this was no ordinary family letter. It was a carefully prepared confession that threatened to rewrite their entire family history. As James finished reading the atmosphere inside Harrington, Manor grew heavier with every passing minute. After William Harrington's hidden letter was read aloud, no one could focus on the inheritance anymore. Every conversation shifted toward one question that refused to leave anyone's mind. If the family had been living with a lie for more than 30 years, then who was the real heir to the Harrington Empire? The answer carried unimaginable consequences. Control of billions of dollars, luxury estates, international companies, and one of America's most powerful business empires depended entirely on the truth. Richard Harrington tried to remain calm, but the confidence he had shown earlier slowly began to disappear. Victoria watched everyone carefully, realizing that a single revelation could completely change the balance of power within the family. James Carter quietly opened another section of his leather briefcase and carefully placed several sealed folders on the massive oak table. Each folder contained official documents that William had collected over decades. There were hospital records, adoption certificates, handwritten notes, confidential legal papers, and old photographs that no one in the family had ever seen before. Every document had been professionally preserved and signed by respected officials to ensure its authenticity. William had anticipated that his family might question the truth, so he had prepared enough evidence to remove every possible doubt. The moment everyone saw the thick stack of confidential files, they realized this mystery had been planned years in advance. James picked up a faded photograph and slowly passed it around the table. The picture showed William Harrington standing inside a hospital room while holding 2 newborn babies wrapped in identical white blankets. Everyone stared at the image in disbelief. Richard immediately claimed the photograph had been manipulated, but James calmly explained that the original negative had also been preserved inside William's private vault. The date printed on the back of the photograph matched the hospital records exactly. As each family member examined the picture more closely, they noticed details that could not easily be dismissed. William looked noticeably younger, and beside him stood the family doctor who had served the Harrington family for decades before passing away many years earlier. The documents revealed that, on the night the twins were born, the Harrington family had received multiple threats from dangerous criminal groups who wanted control of William's growing business empire. Law enforcement had warned William that his children could become targets for kidnapping or extortion. Faced with an impossible decision, William secretly arranged for one branch of the family to disappear from public records. New identities were created, legal adoption papers were prepared, and only 3 people knew the complete truth: William Harrington, his trusted lawyer James Carter, and the family doctor. Everyone else, including Richard and Victoria, had grown up believing an entirely different version of events. Ethan listened silently as each document revealed another hidden piece of his family's history. His heart raced with confusion. The ordinary life he had built for himself suddenly felt connected to a past he had never imagined. Every memory from his childhood seemed different now. He remembered how his adoptive parents had always encouraged honesty, humility, and hard work. They had never treated him like someone connected to extraordinary wealth, yet they had always protected him with unusual care. Looking back, Ethan began noticing small moments that had never made sense before. Unexpected visits from strangers, mysterious birthday gifts with no sender's name, and occasions when his parents seemed frightened after receiving certain phone calls. What had once appeared to be ordinary childhood memories now felt like hidden clues leading toward a truth that had been carefully protected for decades. Richard refused to accept any of the evidence. He insisted that documents could be forged and photographs could be altered. Determined to defend his position, he demanded an independent DNA investigation, conducted by one of the country's most respected forensic laboratories. James agreed without hesitation because William had already anticipated such a request. Inside another sealed envelope were signed authorization forms allowing fresh DNA samples to be collected from every family member. Within hours, medical specialists arrived at the mansion to perform the tests under strict legal supervision. Blood samples were collected, identification records were verified, and every procedure was documented to eliminate any possibility of manipulation. During the waiting period, tension spread throughout the mansion. Family members barely spoke to one another. Employees whispered quietly in the hallways, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding behind closed doors. News reporters gathered outside the estate after learning that unusual legal proceedings were taking place. Rumors began spreading across financial markets that William Harrington had left behind a secret capable of changing the ownership of the entire corporation. Investors became nervous, company executives struggled to answer questions from the media, and business analysts speculated about who would ultimately control one of America's largest fortunes. When the certified laboratory results finally arrived, James carefully opened the sealed report in front of everyone. Every page carried official signatures, government certification, and scientific verification. The DNA analysis confirmed beyond any reasonable doubt that Ethan's biological connection to the Harrington bloodline was genuine. The room fell into complete silence. Years of assumptions, family traditions, and expectations collapsed within a single moment. The search for the true heir was no longer based on rumors or family stories. It had become an undeniable fact supported by evidence that no one could successfully challenge. In the final page, nobody spoke. The silence felt heavier than ever before. The inheritance they had gathered to discuss suddenly seemed far less important than the mystery hidden inside William's final words. Every family member realized that before any fortune could be divided, they would first have to uncover the truth that had remained buried for more than 30 years. The confirmation of Ethan's true identity did far more than rewrite the Harrington family history. It ignited a fierce battle for power that no one could stop. The luxurious halls of Harrington Manor, once filled with elegance and respect, quickly became a place of suspicion, whispered conversations, and hidden agendas. Every member of the family understood that whoever controlled the Harrington empire would possess not only unimaginable wealth, but also influence over thousands of employees, international corporations, and business partnerships across the world. The inheritance was no longer just about money. It had become a fight for reputation, authority, and the legacy of one of America's most powerful billionaire families. Richard Harrington found it impossible to accept the reality unfolding before him. For decades, he had believed the empire would naturally become his. He had spent years attending board meetings, negotiating billion-dollar contracts, and representing the Harrington name in front of investors and world leaders. In his mind, he had already earned the position of chairman. Now, everything he had worked toward appeared to be slipping away because of a secret that had been hidden long before he even knew it existed. Although he remained calm in public, anger slowly began taking control of his decisions. He refused to believe that a man who had spent years living an ordinary life could suddenly become the rightful leader of the family empire. Victoria Harrington reacted differently. Rather than expressing open anger, she carefully observed every conversation taking place around her. She understood that emotional decisions often led to costly mistakes. Quietly, she began contacting trusted advisors, experienced lawyers, and financial consultants to understand how William's hidden documents might affect the company's legal structure. She believed there might still be a way to challenge the inheritance in court. Every evening, confidential meetings were held inside private offices where legal experts reviewed decades of corporate agreements, ownership records, and family trusts, searching for even the smallest technical detail that could weaken Ethan's claim. Meanwhile, Daniel Harrington viewed Ethan as a direct threat to everything he had dreamed of achieving. As the youngest member of the family actively involved in the business, Daniel had spent years preparing himself to become the next generation's leader. He had studied at prestigious universities, built relationships with influential investors, and developed ambitious expansion plans for the company. The sudden appearance of Ethan completely destroyed those expectations. Instead of welcoming him as family, Daniel saw him as an outsider who had unexpectedly walked into a fortune that others had spent their entire lives preparing to inherit. As tensions increased inside the mansion, secret conversations began taking place behind closed doors. Richard privately instructed a team of investigators to examine every detail of Ethan's life. Their mission was simple: find something that could damage his reputation. They searched through employment records, financial statements, educational history, tax documents, social media activity, and personal relationships. Every former employer, colleague, university professor, and neighbor was quietly questioned. Weeks passed as investigators compiled thousands of pages of information, hoping to uncover evidence of dishonesty, financial misconduct, or hidden scandals. However, the deeper they investigated, the more disappointed Richard became. Ethan's record remained remarkably clean. There were no criminal accusations, no financial fraud, no reckless behavior, and no secret lifestyle that could be used against him. Instead, investigators discovered years of honest work, professional integrity, charitable volunteering, and a reputation for treating people with respect. Unable to damage Ethan's personal character, Richard shifted his attention toward the business world. During executive meetings, he questioned Ethan's lack of corporate experience, arguing that managing a multinational company required decades of leadership rather than good intentions. Some senior executives quietly agreed, fearing that sudden leadership changes could create uncertainty among investors. Others believed Ethan deserved an opportunity because his honesty had already earned the respect of employees throughout the organization. The board of directors gradually became divided into separate groups, each supporting a different vision for the company's future. Every meeting became longer, more emotional, and increasingly difficult to control. Outside the company, financial media quickly noticed the growing conflict. Television analysts debated whether the Harrington empire was entering its most unstable period in history. Newspapers published headlines describing a billionaire family divided by hidden secrets and competing claims of leadership. Investors watched every development closely because even small rumors could influence the company's market value. International business partners requested private meetings to understand whether existing agreements would remain secure. The pressure on every family member continued to grow as the entire business world waited to see who would ultimately emerge as the true leader. Despite the growing hostility surrounding him, Ethan refused to participate in personal attacks. Instead of responding with anger or defending himself through the media, he remained focused on understanding the company his grandfather had spent a lifetime building. He spent his days reviewing financial reports, meeting department managers, visiting manufacturing facilities, and speaking directly with employees. Rather than trying to defeat his relatives through conflict, Ethan believed the best way to earn trust was through patience, professionalism, and responsible leadership. While others fought to protect their power, he quietly worked to understand the people whose lives depended on the Harrington. The confirmation of Ethan Harrington's identity placed him in a position that most people could only dream about. Overnight, he became the rightful heir to one of America's largest business empires, with control over luxury hotels, private airlines, technology companies, investment firms, and billions of dollars in assets. News reporters followed his every move. Financial experts analyzed his decisions, and millions of people wondered how an ordinary architect would react after discovering he had inherited unimaginable wealth. To many observers, the obvious choice was simple: accept the fortune, take control of the empire, and enjoy a life of unlimited luxury. But Ethan knew that money alone could never answer the questions that had haunted him since William's letter was read. Instead of immediately signing legal documents that would officially transfer ownership of the company, Ethan asked James Carter for complete access to every personal journal, letter, and confidential record William had left behind. He believed there were still pieces of the story that had not been revealed. William had never been a man to make decisions without careful planning, and Ethan found it difficult to believe that decades of silence could be explained by only a few documents and DNA reports. Every answer seemed to create another question. Why had William chosen to wait until after his death to reveal the truth? Why had Ethan's adoptive parents agreed to remain silent for so many years? And most importantly, what danger had been so great that an entire family's identity had been hidden for more than 3 decades? For several days, Ethan locked himself inside William's private study. The room had remained untouched since the billionaire's death. Shelves filled with leather-bound journals surrounded an antique wooden desk where William had spent countless nights writing his thoughts. One by one, Ethan opened the journals and carefully read every handwritten page. They were not business records or financial plans. Instead, they contained William's personal reflections, regrets, fears, and hopes for the future of the Harrington family. Through those pages, Ethan began to understand that his grandfather had carried the burden of protecting the family for most of his life. William repeatedly wrote that true leadership required sacrifice, and that sometimes the hardest decisions were the ones no one else could ever understand. Among the journals, Ethan discovered several sealed letters addressed to different members of the family. None of them discussed money or inheritance. Instead, they spoke about forgiveness, honesty, responsibility, and the importance of protecting family relationships above personal ambition. William admitted that wealth had given the Harrington family extraordinary opportunities, but it had also created pride, competition, and emotional distance between people who should have trusted one another. He feared that future generations might become obsessed with protecting the empire while forgetting the values that had originally built it. As Ethan continued reading, he came across an old notebook describing the early years of William's business career. The billionaire explained how he had started with almost nothing, working long hours, taking enormous risks, and sacrificing time with his loved ones to build the company. Every achievement had required discipline, honesty, and relentless determination. William repeatedly reminded himself that money should always remain a tool for helping people rather than becoming the purpose of life itself. Reading these words deeply affected Ethan, because they reflected the same principles his adoptive parents had taught him while he was growing up. Although they had never revealed his true identity, they had unknowingly prepared him for the responsibility he now faced. Meanwhile, pressure continued to increase from every direction. Lawyers encouraged Ethan to complete the legal transfer of ownership as quickly as possible. Financial advisors warned him that uncertainty could affect investor confidence. Senior executives requested immediate decisions regarding the company's future leadership. Media organizations waited outside the Harrington estate every day, hoping to capture a statement from the mysterious heir who had suddenly appeared in the middle of one of America's biggest inheritance stories. Friends and strangers alike expected Ethan to embrace his new billionaire lifestyle without hesitation. Yet, despite all the attention, Ethan remained focused on understanding the complete truth before making any life-changing decisions. Rather than spending time exploring luxury mansions, private islands, or expensive collections that now legally belonged to him, Ethan chose to visit the people whose lives had been shaped by William's leadership. He met retired employees who had worked alongside his grandfather during the company's earliest years. They shared stories of William helping struggling workers, paying medical expenses for employees' families, and quietly supporting communities during difficult times without seeking public recognition. These conversations revealed a side of William that newspapers had rarely reported. Behind the image of a powerful billionaire was a man who believed success meant creating opportunities for others, not simply accumulating wealth. Every new discovery strengthened Ethan's belief that the greatest inheritance William had left behind was not measured in billions of dollars, but in principles that could never be bought. He realized that accepting the fortune without understanding the responsibility attached to it would dishonor everything his grandfather had spent a lifetime building. Before making any decision about the Harrington empire, Ethan became determined to uncover every remaining piece of the family's hidden history, convinced that the complete truth was far more valuable than the wealth waiting for him. Empire every single day. Months passed after the truth about the Harrington family became public, and the atmosphere surrounding the billion-dollar empire slowly began to change. The media no longer focused only on the hidden letter or the shocking DNA reports. Instead, attention shifted toward the future of the company and the kind of leader Ethan Harrington would become. Investors, employees, business partners, and even competitors watched every decision he made, knowing that his actions would determine whether the Harrington legacy continued to grow or slowly faded into history. Ethan understood that inheriting wealth was one thing, but proving himself worthy of leading an empire was an entirely different challenge. Unlike many wealthy heirs who immediately surrounded themselves with luxury and privilege, Ethan chose a different path. On his first official day inside the company's headquarters, he walked through every department instead of going directly to the executive office. He introduced himself to receptionists, security guards, engineers, factory supervisors, and office assistants. Rather than expecting special treatment, he listened carefully as employees shared their experiences, concerns, and hopes for the company's future. Many were surprised to discover that the new leader preferred genuine conversations over formal speeches. They saw a man who wanted to understand the people behind the business instead of focusing only on profits and financial reports. As the weeks went by, Ethan continued visiting factories, research centers, and regional offices across the country. He observed production lines, attended employee training sessions, and spent hours speaking with workers who had dedicated decades of their lives to the Harrington organization. Some employees spoke about workplace safety, others discussed healthcare benefits, while many simply wanted a leader who respected their contributions. Ethan carefully noted every concern without making unrealistic promises. He believed lasting change could only happen by understanding problems firsthand rather than relying solely on reports prepared by senior executives. The board of directors also began noticing Ethan's unusual leadership style. Instead of making quick decisions to impress investors, he insisted on studying every proposal in detail. During board meetings, he encouraged open discussions where every executive could express their opinion regardless of their position within the company. This approach surprised many senior leaders who had grown accustomed to decisions being made by only a small group of powerful individuals. Slowly, the culture inside the organization started changing. Employees became more willing to share new ideas, managers focused more on teamwork, and departments that had once competed against each other began working together toward common goals. One of Ethan's first major initiatives focused on investing in people rather than unnecessary luxury. He approved funding for employee education programs, leadership development courses, modern workplace technology, and safer production facilities. Scholarships were introduced for the children of long-serving employees, while additional healthcare support was provided to families facing financial difficulties. Although these investments required significant resources, Ethan believed that a company's greatest strength was not its buildings, machines, or financial assets, but the people whose dedication kept the business running every single day. Business analysts initially questioned these decisions. Some predicted that increased spending on employee welfare would reduce profits and weaken the company's competitive position. Financial television programs debated whether Ethan's compassionate leadership style could survive in the aggressive world of international business. Competitors quietly waited for signs of failure, believing the new chairman lacked the experience needed to manage such a vast organization. However, the opposite gradually began to happen. Employee satisfaction improved, productivity increased, customer trust strengthened, and talented professionals from other companies started applying to join Harrington Industries because of its growing reputation as an excellent place to work. Meanwhile, Ethan never forgot the lessons he had learned from William's journals. Whenever difficult decisions arose, he reminded himself that leadership was not about protecting personal power, but about serving the people who depended on the company for their livelihoods. He encouraged transparency, ethical decision-making, and accountability throughout every level of the organization. Executives were expected to lead by example, while managers were reminded that respect could never be demanded through authority alone. It had to be earned through fairness, honesty, and consistent actions. These values slowly became part of the company's identity, influencing not only business strategies, but also the everyday relationships between employees. As public confidence in the Harrington Empire continued to grow, many people realized that the greatest transformation had not been financial at all. The hidden letter had uncovered a long, buried family secret, but it had also revealed something even more valuable. Wealth could be inherited through legal documents, company shares, and family bloodlines, but wisdom, integrity, humility, and true leadership could never be passed from one generation to another automatically. Those qualities had to be developed through experience, sacrifice, compassion, and the courage to choose what was right even when easier options were available. Every decision Ethan made demonstrated that the true strength of any legacy lies not in the size of its foes. The years passed. The Harrington Empire became stronger than ever before, not because it earned more billions, but because it earned something far more valuable: the trust and respect of the people. Employees no longer worked only for a paycheck. They worked for a leader who genuinely cared about their future. Investors regained confidence, customers remained loyal, and the company's reputation reached new heights across America. Ethan often stood in his grandfather's old office, looking out over the New York skyline, remembering the day a single hidden letter had changed his life forever. One afternoon, while organizing William Harrington's personal belongings, Ethan discovered one final handwritten note tucked inside the last page of the old diary. It contained only a few simple words. "If you are reading this, then you have already learned the greatest lesson I hope to teach you. Wealth can be inherited, but character never can. Money builds empires, but integrity protects them. Never measure your success by the fortune you possess. Measure it by the lives you improve and the legacy you leave behind." Ethan quietly folded the note and placed it inside his jacket pocket. At that moment, he realized that the greatest gift his grandfather had left him was never the billions of dollars, the luxurious estates, or the powerful companies. It was the wisdom to lead with honesty, humility, and compassion. From that day forward, the Harrington name became known not only as one of America's richest families, but also as one of its most respected. The hidden family secret that once threatened to destroy the empire ultimately became the reason it was rebuilt on truth instead of lies. The letter that had remained locked away for more than 30 years had fulfilled its purpose, proving that no secret stays buried forever and that, sooner or later, the truth always finds its way into the light. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, it's the truth that changes generations. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for more powerful billionaire stories, emotional family dramas, and unforgettable life lessons. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Routine, but in the character of the person entrusted to protect it.